Welcome to Savannah's Next Generation Leadership Podcast. The new pace of transformation in business, technology and society creates the need for new skills, new approaches and new ways of thinking. We talk to influential leaders from a diverse set of backgrounds to explore what it takes to build boards and executive teams fit for the future. In each episode, we interview executives, experts and investors at the forefront of their respective fields to uncover the insights, challenges and ideas defining the next generation of leadership.
So welcome to the Next Generation Leadership Podcast with Savannah Group. And today it's an absolute pleasure to welcome a guest, Chelsea Hayes, VP of Operations and Corporate Development at North Peak. A career built on entrepreneurship rather than traditional geology and mining background, and really represents that new wave of leadership in the mining industry. We're here to discuss next generation leadership looks like, the reality of being the only woman in the room, and how the industry can inspire a more diverse future going forward. So, absolute pleasure to be speaking to you today.
Thank you for having me.
So, I guess first of all, you describe yourself really foremost as an entrepreneur who builds businesses. How does that kind of entrepreneurial DNA really I guess give you a different lens on the challenges in the mining industry, and even, building companies to appear in the Dragon's Den? It's a diverse background to most individuals. So how has that helped you so far?
Yeah, I don't think there are many like that. I can describe that as unique. I think although sort of the epitome of entrepreneurship is people that have built businesses from scratch, so founding businesses from 1-2 people, but from what I mean within regards to the how it helps in the mining industry is more about the mindset that comes with that. And when you are building businesses, you are learning and challenging things constantly. You have to have a degree of adaptability and flexibility that you don't get in big organizations. You are sort of, you become jack of all trades, you learn all sorts of different skills. So what it does in an entrepreneurial mindset is it gives you respect for the massive different and breadth of expertise and technical skills. You know that, I have had the pleasure of working for Richard Branson for a bit, and he is the epitome of somebody who recognizes what he doesn't know and gets the experts in. But a key point is recognizing it and allowing those different perspectives into the room. So the entrepreneurial bit that I feel I bring is much more about that mindset of where can we go, what can we do differently, how can we challenge things, and ultimately asking the questions. Why are you doing a geophysical survey? What does that really tell you? Why is it of so much value? Why do investors constantly want drill holes, etc., etc.? And just asking those questions.
You've touched on, obviously, I guess coming from Richard Branson to the mining industry is quite a shift, but what maybe brought you to the industry, and how have you found the mining industry compares to maybe some of the other industries you have worked in?
Well, I've been very, very lucky enough in that my sort of mentor is a man called Harry Dobson, and I would describe him as the Richard Branson of the mining industry. He's not as well known as some of the larger figures, but partly because he doesn't particularly crave or want a big profile. But certainly he has created shareholder value for investors like nobody else. Whether that be building companies such as Kirkland Lake Gold or Rupert Resources, but those are just the more recent ones that I can talk about. And he and I started working together when I had a financial PR agency in London, and he was bringing Kirkland Lake Gold back then was only a 30 million market cap company. And he and I were going to the investors community trying to convince them that this property that everybody thought was mined out could actually be something. And Harry's mindset is trusting and believing and supporting through the cyclical nature that particularly the gold industry has, new techniques and geologists and people, most importantly, to try new things, because that's how you're going to discover a new area or a new thing. And in the Kirkland Lake case, that was allowing a team of geologists to test some new theories, and they unearthed the South Mine Complex, which many will know has delivered some of the highest grade, but also most importantly, lowest cost mines in the world. And then they've done it again over in Finland with Rupert Resources and identifying the Ickery prospect. Different technique, different strategies. But again, Harry Dobson was the founding shareholder in both and allowed the team to try new things and listening. So he is the example of that leadership, though he won't like being described as a leader at all, but allowing and listening to those different perspectives and trying new things, which trying new things and doing things differently isn't something that you naturally associate with the mining industry. And I slightly feel the mining industry is one of those industries that quote, the most dangerous phrase in the world is, we've always done it this way.
Yeah.
And while you mustn't dismiss what has happened in the past, we all know that the best place to look for gold or other minerals is where it's been found before. So it's not about, dismissing it. But if you want to find something new, you've got to do something differently, particularly when you're at the stage of business that we are at North Peak, which is at that early stage exploration. And Harry has, again, we found in North Peak a property that had been mined back in 1880, but mainly because it had been in private family hands for so many years, hadn't had the benefit of external capital to apply modern exploration techniques to it before. So it's looking in an old camp again, which are very similar to the Kirkland Lake story, but applying new thinking, seeing what is out there, and the new technologies that have evolved across industries. Yeah. It's not just in the mining industry. It can be across all sorts of industries. You can apply things and use them to the mining industry to try and deliver. What we need to ultimately do is cost effectively find these critical minerals and elements that are required for the modern world.
I think you've touched on it. With North Peak's a great example where it's respecting the historic data, the infrastructure that's already there, but actually, with the modern techniques, it's where it's a risk element, but it's that risk but high reward opportunities where you are finding these things. And I think for that, I guess, to really evolve, it's having those kind of supportive shareholders who understand that kind of innovation and the uncertainty that may come from that as well. And I guess, it obviously varies the size and different shareholders, but how do you, as a leader, build the trust with the shareholders where it may be, we are testing a new theory or something that's not done before, but we might get something like the South Mine Complex. It's how do you actually build that trust with the shareholders?
Well, again, I feel I have had the luck and privilege of probably the epitome of the perfect shareholder and backer. Harry Dobson not only has the broking and finance background, but actually what is unique about him, he also understands geology. He will dismiss that he's not, but he absolutely can see things in 3D. But how to do that? So for many, I have the benefit of having him and everybody trusts him behind. So, but with regards to how you build that trust, communication is key. Yeah. And clear communication of managing expectations, whatever that is in life. If you manage the expectations appropriately and are clear with that, you help to build. And that is also much more important when you're in a cyclical industry. Again, where Harry is very clever is buying properties in the downturns to then benefit from the upturns.
Yeah.
And we're very lucky at the moment. We're in the middle of an upturn, although people are already talking about, obviously yesterday was an example of a slight drop down, but fundamentally we are definitely still in a bull run. Everybody's already talking about when it's going to calm down. The question is, I, along with probably most people in the industry, feel it may pause for a bit, but it's not going to collapse, unlike maybe some other industries. But it's having shareholders who can ride you through that cyclical nature and build the trust. And trust is built through clear communication. So, in fact, this morning I was talking to Harry, and he was talking about, this is now back in the 1980s, the Cannon mine, where he was a key founder. And he admitted that there was a 20-year-old student who had a theory about testing a hole in a whole new direction. And whether it be, I don't quite know the story about the Barrack and 4 Mile, but maybe they also had a 20-year-old student who tested a new theory because they've been operational there for 30 years. And it is giving that belief behind and trying something new. You have to respect, and, money can't be thrown everywhere. I mean, geologists could have all the money they want to try and, have all the geophysics and all the geochemistry and everything to help them. And there is a bit of luck in all of these things as well. But it's as supportive shareholders, I think you encourage them through clear communication and managing expectations and contextualizing the strategy in the grand scheme of things.
I think you've touched on there. Your background's obviously come from a communication, business, finance background, and not geology. But obviously, as you can see, already heavily involved with the geology and geologist side of things. But do you think as the industry evolves, those kind of non-technical skills and backgrounds are becoming more and more critical for the next generation of leaders within the industry as well?
Well, I think fundamentally the mining industry and the mining needs a sort of rebrand. And I think everybody has started happening, whether it be the Gold Council or Women in Mining doing all their efforts, etc. There are, and the geopolitics in the world at the moment, the recognition of the role of critical metals, that is starting. But the mining industry has to recognise it has to compete, but on across a wider range, whether that is competing for the same investors that is attracting AI, or the communities that you're building in who come from different backgrounds, or within governments. You are having to communicate to that wider audience. So having the non-technical perspective allows you to, it benefits me. If I can understand it, then I can help other people understand it. I don't have the geology degree. So if they're able to explain it and I'm able to explain it back to them, I can then communicate to that wider audience. And in fact, it is amazing how there are circumstances where things do cross industries. I was learning Kirkland Lake Gold, as it evolved, bought the Fosterville mine down in Australia. And going back to my communications industry, I actually worked in the water industry. And one of the water companies had an anaerobic digestion facility. That's basically where the bugs are eating the sewage and creating energy. Now, actually, Fosterville, as an example with the Biox, they are using a similar, it's not identical, but it's the same premise where you are using bugs to extract the gold. And that's, learning. It's a lot more technical and needs a lot more, and that's where I also know you then need the experts in to actually do the delivery. But from a conceptual standpoint, you are understanding why that from another industry can come out, and I can explain it to others what the framework is and premise of how to make this successful. And I believe Fosterville is one of the lowest cost extraction models of higher grade gold, partly because of that. So, that breadth of experience and applying it across can be helpful at times.
Absolutely. And there's a new wave of technology coming through. It's companies like Enderleaf, which are, again, using enzymes to break down processing techniques. You've got ones where they're actually using plants to absorb minerals from tailings. There's so much technology coming out where it is crossing those other industries where, again, it's reducing the carbon footprint of mining. And fundamentally, if you want advancements in AI, renewable power, anything, you need the raw minerals for it. And, it's mining not alone, but these new technologies, innovations, and also that bit where if you help decarbonize the industry, it affects every other industry. It's that message coming out there which can really help. And with that, it's an important bit is the attraction of, more diverse workforce. At the moment, 10-12% are, female within the industry. We're missing out on, 38% of the workforce there at the moment, never mind trying to retain them. And you've often talked about when, you've gone to, conferences, for example, where less than 10% of the attendees are female, and you're getting mistaken for an assistant rather than a VP, and obviously not coming from a pure mining background. How do you find, I guess, that experience, the resilience needed, and also then, I guess, build that credibility as well, because it must be a tough environment as well at that time.
It is, and I think just stepping back, you have to recognise that with North Peak, we're right at the early stage of exploration and development. So I'm sure in the larger mining companies, it's a more balanced picture. But at the early stage where you're a small business, there are a lot less women involved, partly because you are focused on the technical expertise of the geologists or the funders, etc. There's no doubt at times it is slightly soul destroying. It requires a level of confidence. And I know in the past at times I've got defensive about it, which doesn't help. And you need to recognize and understand the audience. There are some audiences where I know, whilst I would want to educate and explain, they're not ready to listen because they're too set in their ways. Yeah. But there are other times where we have a responsibility to, and I think it's about starting to change the narrative, and it's about a change in language. And the language is key. And by that, you can educate. Actually, what roles are we doing here? Whose responsibility is that? What is the objective here? And question it in a calm way to then help people recognize. Often it's just a lack of awareness rather than an intentional misunderstanding. They're just going back to that, they're just doing what they've always done, and the assumptions there. So there's an education, but it's doing it you do have to be ready to be in the right mindset, and it's not always there. We are all human after all.
Well, I think that's it. The industry is definitely shifting. I think the more and more people, male, female, talk about things openly and making that right kind of environment. I think obviously your communications background helps with that communication piece. But I think, as the industry evolves with the advancements of technology, it's almost one of the senior leaders I spoke to was saying, we're now a digital company that mines more than a mining company that uses digital, because there is that embracement. And with that, there is that need for, I guess, diverse experiences and individuals come into your organizations, I say, that are different in the past. And one is attracting them, but retaining them and keeping them in there. What can, senior leaders do, which can really, an immediate action to make that kind of environment, which will encourage diverse perspectives, particularly from women, but their opinions are sought and valued. As we know, increased diversity, increased health and safety, increases profitability, increases performance. All these things, the stats are there. But what kind of actions can these leaders be doing to really help with that?
I think, in essence, there are two elements that all modern leaders need more of. That's the ability to listen and respect, the two words. So listening to that wider audience, often the quietest person in the room. It doesn't really matter what gender it is. The key is listening for the different perspectives. A different gender can provide a different perspective by its very nature, but the key is whether it be what division they're representing, whether that be your community, your the regulators that you're working with, or the governments, or your investors. It's understanding and positioning, so listening and respecting those different perspectives. It doesn't always mean that you listen to a perspective and you think that they're right, but it is very, very important that you've heard that, because it will enable you to make the right decision. Dare I say, going back to the Dragon's Den experience, you could hear some of the questions I got asked were completely wrong and inappropriate. But you recognize that that's because they hadn't heard, or I hadn't conveyed a message that I needed them to hear. So you can learn as much from when somebody's got it wrong as when they've got it right. So the leaders going forward absolutely needs to be about listening and respecting more. And I think that will bring improve whatever industry you're in, the type of leaders that we've got going forward.
I think it's a key thing, even within more awareness around neurodiversity. I've got ADHD in it, and my son has. I think more you learning where your strengths are, but also the areas where you're not as strong. It's then building, when you're dealing with individuals in the organisation, allowing that they might not be amazing at everything, but actually where are the strengths? It's that kind of skill-first approach with individuals where, there's some things I'm brilliant at, some not, but then do you need someone to do everything, or you then actually fit things around it? I think when we were speaking earlier, you're saying sometimes people may be excellent at this, but then you force them to do another area. It's actually, let's make them excel at this, and then we can support on that side. And I think it's like, say, listening to every voice in the world will have that different opinions and then help influence. And say it's not, you can't always agree with everyone, but being heard and having those ideas and feel valued enough to do it is what's key, really.
Well, as you say, it's the respect that's why the respect is so important. I think when we were talking earlier, in our team we have a geologist who is not a fan of SharePoint or saving in the right thing, but, and writing out the meeting notes. But he is a world-class mapping geologist and will be out in that field mapping. And that is the most important thing for us to really deliver what we believe could be a world-class deposit that we're not even at resource stage yet. We need those fundamentals, and we need him to do that job. Doesn't really matter about whether he's managed to save it on SharePoint. Somebody else can do that. We need him doing what he's doing so that we can deliver what we want for our shareholders.
I think it's one thing we've seen as well, which is there's been a couple, obviously, very senior roles taken by females in the industry, which has been absolutely fantastic. And we are seeing so more of these visible female role models. Again, things like this are key to really helping attract the industry as well. But beyond hiring, what can I guess the industry and and this is not just on women in mining organizations like this, but actually an industry as a whole, to really help to inspire the next generation to join the industry, but also then to really succeed as well.
Well, I think that you mentioned women in mining, and I have to start with them initially. They are a fantastic organization, and I think perhaps that's the immediate win, as you say, is supporting them, because I've certainly found their events, which I hasten to add are open to most of them are open to men and women, but do provide a incredibly supportive and encouraging network. And certainly going back to my background, when you're in a small organization and you are the only woman in the room, it is incredibly valuable and appreciated to have that environment. But yes, we need, the mining industry as a whole needs to grow. And obviously the larger, enormous organizations, the Barracks of the world, the Rio Tintos, etc., are at the forefront and are sitting, by the very nature of their size, on a different level and have that opportunity to really change. I do hope that the women aren't being hired when there's a glass cliff coming as well as the glass ceiling, and they are in a stage, and I'm hopeful now with where the cyclical nature of the market is, that they for once are being hired at the right time rather than just when they're in a moment of crisis. But yes, it is the more role models, it's wonderful you're doing things like this as an example of demonstrating. I mean, the mining industry, when talking to other people about how to come in, it is an industry where you have an opportunity to have a real impact.
Yeah.
And, yes, you can see the numbers of females are disproportionate, and obviously sometimes in only certain areas or divisions of businesses, but that difference in itself is an opportunity, and that different perspectives allows you to challenge the status quo. So to have the mindset of seeing it as an opportunity to really have that impact and deliver value. There will be times where, and I know it can be lonely and a bit soul destroying, but that's where you have the, Women in Mining event and other things to provide you that work. And that's also normal human nature. So it's exciting. We've got it, I think, with the nature of where we're at this moment in time, with the geopolitical situation, we have a real opportunity for this to be a transformational moment for women in the mining industry and the mining industry in itself, to widen its perspective, widen its communication, and appeal to a wider market, whatever gender.
I think that's a very interesting point. I mean, when you look at the entry level, the percentage of women with degrees compared to men is higher, so it's then attracts them, but then actually moving them forward. But it still amazes me when the amount of individuals I speak to who still just think the mining industry is, some coal mines, a pickaxe and a hat. They don't realise how big it is. And when you start talking through it, they really see, how large industry is. It's, you mine it, you grow it, or you recycle it. It's foundations really to everything. So I think looking wider, it still is one of those industries which is kind of under the radar, but so large. And I think that communication piece touched on is actually to the wider areas about people realising an industry there. It's not just this old-fashioned dirty industry, but it's cutting-edge technology. You're controlling things a mile underground. You're controlling things, it's, advancements in automation, AI that's being fed into it. And I think maybe with more of this focus on the critical minerals, and you start seeing in the news a lot more about trying to secure it, it might be opening people's eyes about the industry being there. But how do you, maybe the industry as a whole, get that message out to wider people? Because there's still so many people who just don't realise it's there. But I guess it's something.
I know. And I think this is also where women's skill sets often are often stronger, and that is the psychology with the positioning of mining. And I must recommend a documentary that Dr. Sarah Gordon did at the National History Museum. And forgive me, I can't remember exactly the title, but she got a group of 100 people and discussing the role of critical metals and just educating, but challenging questions with the psychology around it. Because if you understand the psychology and what people are thinking, you can then tailor your communications to have the right impact. And in this sort of very brief, she highlighted these people in the room, just their lack of awareness and appreciation of the impact of mining, from your heart transplant machine to your solar panel to your battery in your car, but the need and the limited supply, and how we have to support and contextualize that. So I think that's where women have a real advantage. They have a natural, their emotional intelligence and the understanding the psychology. And that's where there's a real opportunity for changing and really making a difference.
No, absolutely. And I think, as we've touched on, you do see the industry evolving and changing. Probably the last, even 4 or 5 years compared to, I've been supporting the industry 20, 25 years. Dread to think about it now, but there's been so much recently. I guess looking forward to the next 5, maybe even 10 years, how do you see maybe the industry evolving, and what's your kind of biggest hope to see how that leadership in the industry can maybe be then evolving in the future?
Yeah, well, I think we touched on it earlier. As you said, we've seen some very good recent high-profile promotions of women, and there is what I am seeing is the seeds have been planted for a growth of looking at widening and positioning the industry in the wider world. We've now just got to make sure that we embrace that and really deliver on that, because, it's very easy for it to, if the cycle drops down, will we go backwards? So the key is to build on the momentum and work that has already been put in place and keep that momentum going, and keep ensuring that, as I mentioned, let's hope it's not glass cliffs, and that that this next wave has been allowed to flourish, because yes, we're beyond the first, but our key role now, particularly as women in leadership in mining, is to make sure that we're not the last. And that's our duty, is to bring on and encourage it to grow and develop, rather than just, we're there at the table now. We've got to keep coming to that table, and embracing an environment that not just gender, but different perspectives and elements are allowed to be incorporated and a part of the discussion.
And I guess just one last question. Thinking back to the days when you were on Dragon's Den compared to now, sourcing drill rigs, working on different mine sites around the world, I imagine you never thought your career would probably bring you to here. But what's probably your key message to individuals who have maybe thought about the industry or never even contemplated the industry as a whole? But what have you taken from the industry, and I guess what keeps you in it, and why would you recommend it to other people to consider it as a career, really?
Well, first of all, going back to your very first question about entrepreneurial and mindset, I guess one thing I didn't address was, I think an entrepreneurial mindset also has a passion. And I am very lucky in that I am completely passionate about the North Peak property that we have in Nevada. Yeah. And I had the absolute privilege of being out there last week and watching the rig arrive and start drilling this historic mining camp that hasn't really been tapped for 100 years. So that is an absolute privilege, and it is. I embrace the sort of the breadth of opportunity, and it is. Here I am sitting back in the UK. Last week I was in Nevada. A few weeks I'll be in Zurich or Toronto talking to investors. It is, and again, that's the entrepreneurial mindset of that complete difference and change. Yeah. But that's only at my end of the spectrum, when you're a very small exploration company and that you're a small team. But the breadth, as I think you raised, a mining isn't just about the pickaxe down the mine. There is that breadth and explaining its whole impact. And it is wonderful to see some of the larger companies beginning to really demonstrate and share with the wider world the breadth and opportunity that the mining industry has, and that we hope we can attract some of the best talent to really help deliver the potential that it has, and how it can help the whole world grow, because we need the mining industry to support and allow us to deliver the world of the future.
Well, I think that's it. If you're wanting to move on the technology, you want to affect climate change, decarbonisation, we need the critical minerals there to do it. And, we're seeing investment from all over the world now trying to secure these supply chains. But the more that the industry can help to attract, again, support these innovative startup companies, attract new talent to the industry with innovative ideas, it's just going to be beneficial to, well, that sounds dramatic, the whole planet, really. It's one of the most key ingredients for that.
And it's not dramatic. It may sound dramatic, but it's also fact.
Yeah.
And that's why it is a privilege being part of the mining industry. So.
Well, look, I appreciate we could probably talk for 3 or 4 days, but thank you very much for your time today. And look, good luck with everything, North Peak. It's fantastic asset there, and really appreciate your thoughts. Thank you very much.
Yes, we look forward to those drill results coming in. Hopefully, we get the lucky bit now. It's definitely there. It's just a question of when.
You need that 20-year-old. Chelsea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye.